These videos show the moment thousands of rioters charged through Brazil's Congress.
In an angry response to the storming of Congress by ex-President Jair Bolsonaro's supporters, tens of thousands of people in Brazil have participated in pro-democracy rallies. Before we dive into it, make sure you give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more updates. Let's get started. The pro-democracy protesters held rallies across Brazil demanding jail for the former president's supporters who stormed the Congress earlier this week. In São Paulo, crowds chanted that Bolsonaro must go to prison while about 1,500 people have been held over Sunday's riots in the capital Brasilia. They came a week after President Lula was sworn in after October's election that had divided Brazil. What actually happened in Brazil? On Sunday, shocking scenes emerged from the Brazilian capital of Brasilia when thousands of protesters dressed in the country's official football shorts and flags not only overran the police but also vandalized the heart of the state. The rioters broke windows, hurled computers and other electronic equipment on the ground and toppled furniture. Reportedly, they also punched holes in Emiliano de Cavalcante's painting at the presidential palace while destroying other art pieces. While on Monday, thousands of pro-democracy protesters held rallies across Brazil demanding accountability from the country's former President Bolsonaro's supporters who stormed the Congress and other government buildings in Brasilia over the weekend. The crowds chanted, "No amnesty," repeatedly in a bid to demand retribution against the rioters who stormed the Brazilian capital along with the ones which caused chaos in government buildings. On Monday evening, the 77-year-old new leader visited the damaged buildings of Congress, the presidential palace and the Supreme Court together with the country's governors. He condemned the terrorist acts, and vowed to punish the perpetrators. While on the other hand, Bolsonaro, aged 67, has not admitted defeat in the tightly fought election and flew to the U.S. before the handover on January 1. He was admitted to a hospital in Florida with abdominal pain on Monday. On the same day, street rallies were held in a number of cities and towns. The turnout at São Paulo's demonstration was impressive as a part of Paulista Avenue, Brazil's most famous street, was blocked off as crowds filled the area, singing, dancing and chanting for justice. Many came dressed in red, the colors of Lula's Workers' Party, while others waved placards saying, "No amnesty for the coup-mongers." The protesters called for those responsible to be punished, chanting, "Prison for Bolsonaro." There was a huge police presence, and the atmosphere felt tense. People are still processing what happened, and nerves haven't yet calmed for many. The dramatic scenes in Brasilia saw thousands of protesters clad in yellow Brazil football shirts, and flags overrun police and ransack the heart of the Brazilian state. And Lula was forced to declare emergency powers. So on Monday morning, heavily armed officers started dismantling a camp of Mr. Bolsonaro's supporters in Brasilia as a number of them have been set up outside army barracks around the country since the tightly fought presidential election. The Brazilian authorities detained more than 1,200 people on Monday because of the riots over the weekend, which sent shockwaves across the nation, while another 300 were detained on Sunday. But in retaliation, thousands of pro-democracy rallies were held, and people in São Paulo chanted that Bolsonaro should be jailed. Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva Lula convened multiple meetings, and his cabinet underscored that the attack on government buildings would not delay his legislative agenda. But 6 hours after the violence broke out, Mr. Bolsonaro condemned the attack and denied responsibility for encouraging the rioters in a post on Twitter, putting out the message that he has no responsibility for inciting the riots. Meanwhile, Brasilia Governor Ibanez Rocha has been removed by the Supreme Court for 90 days from his post. Justice Minister Alexander de Moraes accused him of failing to prevent the riot and being painfully silent in the face of the attack. A video on social media showed some officers laughing and taking photos together as demonstrators occupied the congressional campus in the background. Bolsonaro supporters had created camps in cities across Brazil, some of them outside the military barracks because his most ardent supporters wanted the military to intervene and make good elections that they said were stolen. But on Monday, armed officers started dispersing the camps of Bolsonaro's supporters in Brasilia. While the heavily armed officers dismantled their camps in Brasilia, there are several other such arrangements set up by Bolsonaro's supporters across the nation since the presidential election. Some protesters are not just angry that Bolsonaro lost the election. They want President Lula to return to prison as Lula spent 18 months in jail after being found guilty of corruption in 2017, but his convictions were later annulled. He was initially sentenced to more than 9 years. Heads of state around the world also denounced the violence. President Joe Biden conveyed the unwavering support of the United States for Brazil's democracy during a phone call with Lula, according to a White House statement. Who do you think is on the right side? Let me know in the comments section below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel for more amazing content. Until next time.